Ukrainian drones are once again powerfully attacking Moscow. Russian airfields have been paralyzed and military factories are in flames. Russia is pressing along the entire front, but Ukrainians have managed to advance in the hottest sector. Trump is urging Ukraine to launch a major offensive against Russia, while he himself is preparing an aggressive end to the war. It has finally happened. The European Union has stunned the Kremlin with a powerful package of sanctions. Is Putin really terminally ill? For the first time, a resuscitation vehicle was spotted in the dictator's motorcade. A sensational statement. NATO is ready to attack Kaliningrad. Greetings, my name is Katerina Pakhalchuk, and right now, let's get to the main news. But first, like this video if you support Ukraine, and subscribe to our channel so we don't lose each other on YouTube. And let's start with news from the front. Kupiansk remains an important target for Russia, while the village of Ambarne is under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. This was stated by Viktor Trehubov, the spokesperson for the Ukrainian armed forces in Khortytsia. According to him, the occupiers have been trying for a year to gain a foothold beyond the Oskil River. But so far, they have not managed to reach the city itself. Trehubov also said that near Vovchansk, the Russians are pressing as well, but without any success.
In the Kupiansk direction, the Russians had a major objective to reach Kupiansk itself. It still pains them, as it is a city they once controlled but had to flee from. That's why they have been actively trying for a year now to secure a foothold beyond the Oskil, to reach the city itself and carry out some offensive actions there. At present, they have not reached the city, although they are making very active attempts. The Russians are throwing everything they have along the entire line of contact, hoping to achieve at least some results by autumn.
However, despite this, the situation in the Vovchansk direction, according to a lieutenant of the armed forces of Ukraine with the call sign Alex, has significantly worsened.
In the Taiki area, in the Vovchansk direction, the situation has specifically deteriorated. If things continue this way, the prospect is a withdrawal to the Vovchansky Khutori.
The situation is also tense around Pokrovsk. This was reported by Staff Sergeant of the Information and Communications Service of the NGU Chervona Kalina Brigade, Serhiy Kuprichuk.
As of now, the Russians do not have the capability to storm Mirnorod and Pokrovsk, so they have concentrated their main forces on attempts to encircle them, since they still lack the strength and resources to enter the cities or launch frontal assaults.
This is also confirmed by military expert Serhiy Hrabsky. According to him, Russia wants to avoid a bloody meat grinder and therefore does not engage in street fighting.
The situation is extremely difficult because the enemy has learned the lessons of Bakhmut, the enemy has learned the lessons of Avdiivka, and so now they are, trying to act in a more combined manner. But this combination of strikes consists in the fact that the enemy is pinning down our troops along the front line from Novoekonomichny to Vodyan. And at the same time, north of Novoekonomichny, we are observing rather significant advances by the enemy in the direction of Koptiv, Razin, Rudinsky towards Krasny Lyman. This is causing very serious concern because you are absolutely right, and I can confirm this. As of today, it can already be stated that our logistical communications, which supply the Pokrovsk-Minorad agglomeration, the Pokrovsk-Minorad fortified area, are under attack from enemy drones. This seriously complicates the issue of meeting the needs of our troops who are defending there. There is serious concern that the enemy wants to play the same game, the Avdiivka game, in the area of Pokrovsk and Mirnorod. Why is this important for the enemy? Because they understand that the Pokrovsk-Mirnorod agglomeration in terms of its size is larger than Bakhmut, and therefore getting involved in street fighting in this direction is critically disadvantageous for them. It would just be a bloody meat grinder on both sides, leading to serious casualties and losses. If we don't really have a choice and have to hold on, for the Russians it means losing the momentum of their offensive.
But one way or another, the situation is critical. In the Pokrovsk area, up to 110,000 troops are concentrated along a stretch of less than 100 kilometers. As Hrabsky says, this level is comparable to the scale of World War II. However, today the number could already be as high as 160,000. Former spokesperson of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Vladislav Seleznyov, says that in recent weeks the enemy has increased the number of personnel in the Pokrovsk and Mirnorod directions.
An absolutely clear pincer of operational encirclement is being created and formed around the Pokrovsk-Mirnorod urban agglomeration. From the west and southwest, the enemy's advance is not as large scale, but to the east and northeast of Mirnorod, the situation is showing rather threatening trends. So what do we basically need to understand? Essentially, the key factor influencing the situation on the battlefield is the factor of resources. Just recently, we saw the figure of 160,000. That is the number of enemy personnel the opposing army has concentrated in the Pokrovsk-Mirnorod direction. This is significantly more than the numbers that were being cited just 2 weeks ago, because back then it was about 110,000.
The purpose for which Russia is amassing its forces is obvious. The pace of their advance is accelerating. It is accelerating to such an extent that by 2025, the Russian army has already seized territory the size of Luxembourg, almost 2,400 square kilometers. For comparison, throughout the entire year of 2024, Russia captured 3,400 square kilometers. Alongside this, we have news from the Institute for the Study of War. According to analysts, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to advance on the hottest front. Deep State, in turn, reports that the enemy has advanced near Voskresenka, Zeleny High, and in Yablunivka. At the same time, the General Staff reported that as of the morning of the 18th of July, there had been 180 combat engagements on the front. Over the past day, Russia lost 1,180 soldiers on the front. In the Pokrovsk direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled 61 Russian assaults. In the Novopavlivka direction, the defense forces stopped 17 attempts by the occupiers to break through the defensive lines. In the Lyman direction, Russian forces attacked 30 times, attempting to advance near the settlements of Novoyehorivka, Khrekivka, Karpivka, Zelena Dolina, Kolodyazy, Serebryanka, and towards Novy Mir, Torske, and Shandaroholov. And all of this happened in just one day. No matter how difficult it is, our men and women are holding the front. Write words of support to our defenders. We know for sure that they are watching us. Katerina Lisunova. Do you remember the conversation between President Zelensky and Trump on the 4th of July, when Trump called after talks with Putin, said he was disappointed in him, and admitted that Ukraine needs patriots?
Announcer, Ukraine needs patriots for defense. I don't want people to die. I am very dissatisfied with my conversation with President Putin, and it seems to me that he just wants to keep killing people.
Katerina Lisunova. So Trump wasn't just talking about that. The Washington Post writes that in that conversation, Trump told Zelensky that Ukraine should go on the offensive.
Announcer, during his conversation with Zelensky on the 4th of July, Trump stated that Ukraine would not change the course of the war by playing defense, and that it needed to go on the offensive, according to a Ukrainian official.
Katerina Lisunova. These words became another detail of the president's conversation, previously reported by the Washington Post and Financial Times. Let me remind you, it was in the 4th of July conversation that the topic of striking deep into Russia was discussed, something that, as it turned out, Trump fully supports.
Announcer, according to journalist sources, the President of the United States supported the idea of strikes deep into Russia, considering it a strategy to make the Russians feel pain and force the Kremlin to come to the negotiating table.
Katerina Lisunova. But that's not all the news from the White House. U.S. State Department Press Secretary Tammy Bruce stated that President Trump is preparing an aggressive plan to end the war.
Tammy Bruce. I believe the president is the person who will make these decisions, and he continues to approach this aggressively so that his vision for ending this conflict can be realized.
Katerina Lisunova. Now the main question, I hope, aggressive towards Russia? We, and not just us, have repeatedly said that Putin is a pompous coward. We've heard about the quarantine for those wishing to meet with the dictator. We've also heard about the body doubles, triples, and armored cars. But still, the Kremlin managed to surprise us again. Do you know how many cars are in Putin's motorcade? 17. But the main thing isn't the number, but the composition of this motorcade. The other day, Putin quietly decided to visit the Chelyabinsk region. So quietly, in fact, that public transport in the city was halted for half a day. So, during that trip, the motorcade included an ambulance, specifically a mobile intensive care unit. Considering that this hasn't happened before, can we hope that Putin doesn't have much time left and that one of the illnesses he's rumored to have will finally finish him off? Who else feels the same way as I do? Give this video a like. It's symbolic and powerful. On the 18th of July, the European Union imposed its 18th package of sanctions against Russia. The new restrictions have already been dubbed some of the toughest, as the sanctions package includes the previously announced price cap on Russian oil at $45. Katerina Lisunova. And this means that Russia's main source of income will take a significant hit. But it's not just about oil.
Narrator, a ban on any transactions related to Nord Stream 1 and 2. The end of illusions about their future. A price cap on oil from Russia. Another 105 vessels of the Russian tanker fleet will be sanctioned. This is a direct blow to schemes for circumventing restrictions. A complete ban on the import of petroleum products made from Russian oil. Sanctions against the Russian Direct Investment Fund. A hit to the pockets of the Russian elite. A complete SWIFT ban for another 22 Russian banks and an effective prohibition of all transactions. A ban on transactions by financial operators in third countries who help Russia circumvent sanctions. Export restrictions amounting to more than 2.5 billion euros. Technologies and critical industrial goods will no longer reach Russia. 22 companies, both Russian and foreign, that directly support Russia's military-industrial complex will come under sanctions. Those involved in the ideological indoctrination of Ukrainian children in Russia will also be sanctioned.
Katerina Lisunova. We will see the Kremlin's full reaction in due time. For now, there are words from Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko, who said that Russia will introduce retaliatory restrictions. Former Russian President and Deputy Chairman of the Security Council Dmitry Medvedev responded to the sanctions with threats to intensify strikes on Ukraine.
Announcer. The European dimwits have served up the 18th package of sanctions against our country. There's no point in saying that it can change Russia's position any more than the previous 17 did. Our economy, of course, will withstand it, and the defeat of the Banderite regime will continue. Strikes on targets in the so-called Ukraine, including Kyiv, will be carried out with increasing force.
Katerina Lisunova. Well, we've heard such threats more than once. No one doubted that Russia would continue its terror. The European Union, as reported by the media, has already begun work on the next package of sanctions. On behalf of all Ukrainians, I thank Europeans for their determination and support. I also thank our viewers. When I read the comments, it's nice to see that the civilized world is still on the side of truth. I know that many foreigners are watching us. If you support Ukraine, write in the comments which country you are watching us from.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Gazprom is being hit not only physically by attacking the oil refineries of Russia's largest energy corporation, but also virtually. Ukrainian intelligence cyber warriors managed to attack Gazprom's network infrastructure.
Announcer. As a result of the attack, large volumes of data, backup copies, databases of subsidiary companies, as well as analytics on pipelines and technical systems were destroyed. Servers were damaged, including those responsible for managing the infrastructure.
Katerina Lisunova. And just to clarify, more than 20,000 administrators lost access to the system. Another explosive night in Russia due to an attack by Ukrainian drones. The drones loudly woke up residents of the Moscow region. The mayor of Moscow stated that the capital itself was the target, but the air defense managed to repel the attack.
There it is. There was a hit. There was a hit.
Katerina Lisunova. Explosions were heard in the city of Dzerzhinsk, Nizhny Novgorod region, where there is a munitions manufacturing plant. The Russian Ministry of Defense, as usual, claimed that they shot down all 70 drones. Katerina Lisunova. After the overnight drone attack, the Shekinah Azot chemical plant in Tula, Russia, was shut down. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council, also commented on this attack.
Something exploded at Shekinah Azot in the Tula region of Russia. This is an important enterprise for the production of ammonia, methanol, and urea. All these substances are the basis for explosives, solid rocket fuel, and synthetic materials for the Russian military-industrial complex. Without this enterprise, the production cycle of missiles, drones, and explosives for the Russian army is disrupted.
As we can see, this game can be played by two, but Ukraine strikes military targets, while Russia launches drones at residential buildings where people are sleeping. He tortured Ukrainian soldiers, and now he has been identified. Investigative journalists have identified the doctor at the correctional colony in Mordovia who tortured Ukrainian prisoners of war. He is 34-year-old Ilya Sorokin, who earned the nickname Dr. Evil among the inmates. He used the stun gun, forced prisoners to sing Russian songs, and denied medical assistance, which led to the death of at least one prisoner. Journalists spoke with several former prisoners who were held there from February 2023 to April 2025. And here's what they have to say.
I said that I was from the 36th Separate Marine Brigade, an officer, a contract soldier. Contract soldiers are their favorite category. That's it. And they just started beating me. I don't know how many blows, I was somewhere. Honestly, I didn't count, but it was definitely like that. I tried not to scream, but after the 10th or 12th blow, I just couldn't take it anymore. Sorry, but they just kept beating me and beating me without saying anything, just saying it was from Mariupol.
Sometimes the prisoners also called Sorokin Dr. Shocker.
And he doesn't stop. I see him standing there in the white coat. I think, well, the doctor is going to say something now. I told them that I had been suspected of having tuberculosis. He says to me, "What are you supposed to shout?" I don't know, it was our first time there, and he hits me with the shocker. I stay silent, standing there. "What are you supposed to shout?" He hits me with the shocker again. Then he says, "Come on, curse at me." I apologize. And I ask, "So what am I supposed to shout?" "Glory to Russian medicine." So I shout, "Glory to Russian medicine," so that it would fill out the form. And again, he hits me with the shocker.
Now Sorokin takes part in the May 9th parades, wears a Soviet uniform and St. George ribbons, and has visited occupied Crimea. It's good that he has been identified. I hope that this scam becomes a target for the Ukrainian special services, and we know that their reach is long. And now, attention! NATO has announced its readiness to wipe out Kaliningrad. And gentlemen, this is an official statement.
NATO allies can wipe out Russia's Kaliningrad region in an extremely short time if such a need arises. This was stated by the commander of the US Army in Europe and Africa, General Christopher Donahue.
NATO is trying to take into account the experience of the Russian-Ukrainian war, where the main component turned out to be ground confrontation, and the deterrence of enemy potential at sea and in the air is also achieved by ground-based means rather than by symmetrical naval or air weapon systems.
Donahue mentioned the Kaliningrad region, controlled by the Russians, which is about 75 kilometers wide and is surrounded on all sides by NATO countries. Now it can be wiped out by ground-based means in unprecedented timeframes and faster than we ever could before, the general says.
What do you think of such decisive statements from an organization that is usually indecisive? A record 100 billion euros in aid is being prepared by the European Union for Ukraine. This money will be directed towards the restoration and strengthening of our country's defense capabilities. Details in the report.
Trillions of euros for the European Union and billions of euros for Ukraine. The EU is forming a budget for the next 10 years, which already includes funds for the reconstruction of post-war Ukraine. In particular, the draft of the new European Union budget for 2028-2034 was presented by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. It is planned that it will amount to 2 trillion euros. According to the official, the budget is strategic and is intended to enhance the ability to respond quickly to unexpected challenges, as well as to cover already foreseeable expenses, such as the reconstruction of Ukraine.
We are allocating 100 billion euros for Ukraine. We have a fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Initially, after an interim analysis, it amounted to 50 billion. These amounts are gradually decreasing, so we are proposing 100 billion euros to replenish the Ukrainian fund, support reconstruction, resilience, and of course, their path toward EU membership.
The funds are planned to be allocated for the restoration of affected regions, infrastructure projects related to our country's defense capability, and various humanitarian programs such as support for veterans or assistance to children. At the same time, the anticipated record investments in Ukraine have once again encountered protests from some members of the European Union, including both Putin's allies and supporters of official Kyiv, each pursuing their own interests.
The issue of aid to Ukraine and the allocation of 100 billion has already, as they say, caused concern in Budapest for Viktor Orban. Well, that's understandable. Germany as well is opposed to such an increase in the European Union's budget. In particular, government spokesperson Cornelius stated that at a time when countries are now trying to increase their national budgets and are mobilizing to consolidate these budgets specifically for defense spending, increasing the overall budget for the European Union, well, as they say, is not timely right now.
However, most EU participants support such financial programs for the next 10 years. This also includes support for the allocated amount to official Kyiv. Given that by this period Ukraine may already be part of the EU, even if integration processes are still ongoing, a stable situation in our country is beneficial for the majority of EU members.
Andrei Khomulya. In any case, it is clear that the European Union is interested in providing financial support to Ukraine, because one way or another, much depends on Ukraine's stability for the European Union itself. At the same time, there is a rather serious and influential subversive network within the European Union, which is openly supported by Russia and in turn implements pro-Russian policies.
Narrator. At the same time, in the new budget, all financial packages for member countries will be conditional on adherence to the rule of law. This is a key change in response to the rollback of democracy in Hungary, von der Leyen noted. There is also ongoing active discussion not only about changing the principle of financing EU countries, but also about the voting principle, since in recent years Hungary itself has shown that the system is far from perfect.
Andrei Khomulya. Ultimately, the European Union will have to develop some tools that will allow decisions to be implemented in the interests of the European Union without the possibility that, for example, a single pro-Russian government could block them for some time.
Narrator. In turn, analysts believe that the idea of investing 100 billion is undoubtedly wonderful. Now, it would be nice to move from ideas to action. And the main task for the EU today is to create a mechanism where the will of the majority can be implemented without hindrance, rather than being endlessly blocked by individual politicians.
Correspondent, don't believe there's a war in Ukraine. Get ready, you'll go and see it with your own eyes. A film was made in the Czech Republic about skeptics who didn't believe in Russia's war against Ukraine. In the past tense, because now they believe. 3 Czechs who agreed to become the protagonists of the film The Great Patriotic Trip came under fire in Donbass, saw wounded people, mass graves and underground schools. Their reactions were filmed on camera. In my opinion, the filmmakers achieved their goal. They proved the reality of war to those who still believed in Kremlin narratives. The film will be released to the public on the 21st of August. Then we will be able to judge for ourselves. Correspondent, and this video is currently going viral online. It already has over 20 million views. In these shots, a man was caught cheating. Here are a few details. At a Coldplay concert, cameras broadcast to the entire stadium as Andy Byron, the director of an IT company and an astronomer, was seen embracing the company's HR manager, Christine Cabot. You can see how, after the camera zoomed in, the couple awkwardly tried to hide from it. But it was already too late, the affair had been exposed. And at that very moment, his wife was at home with their 2 children. After the video went viral online, his wife deleted all their shared photos and removed his last name from her account, leaving only her maiden name. His fortune is estimated at $70 million. At least $35 million will go to the betrayed wife if it comes to a divorce. Billionaire or not, even people like that get caught cheating. What do you think, was the exposure really accidental, or did someone actually want this to come out? Write your thoughts below. Like this video to support what we do, and be sure to subscribe to our channel Ukraine Today so you don't miss our next episodes. See you next time!